Not everyone wants an electric car as avant-garde as a Tesla. Some people just want their favourite brand only in EV form. If you're a fan of Mercedes, could the EQA be the small electric SUV for you? Before we get into the details though, as always, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. If you've watched a few of our videos, you're probably starting to get the impression that there are a lot of similar looking electric SUVs on the market. The EQA also looks rather like the Mercedes GLA, which isn't surprising because they use the same platform. The only real external cue that this isn't a petrol car is a lack of a front grille, which has been replaced by a solid panel. This is technically a crossover, but it's a bit big for that class of vehicle, definitely venturing into proper SUV territory. It's not a bad looking car though, quite classy as you'd hope for a Mercedes, but also quite generic. We do like the more rounded lines of the last few Merc generations though. There are three basic models of EQA corresponding to engine power. All three have the same 66.5 kilowatt hour battery. The 250, which is what we have here, has 190 horsepower and is front wheel drive. The 300 4MATIC is dual motor with 228 horsepower. Then there's a 350 4MATIC with 292 horsepower. Trim levels include Sport, AMG Line Premium and AMG Line Premium Plus. Even the Sport includes advanced safety features, a reversing camera, heated front seats and a powered boot release. The basic wheels are 18-inch and on the AMG line you get better looking 18-inch alloys and exterior decoration plus a sports steering wheel. The AMG Line Premium adds even nicer 19-inch wheels, a panoramic sunroof, keyless entry, better sound and wireless phone charging. We've got the AMG Line Premium Plus here, which has even nicer 20-inch wheels, adaptive dampers, 360-degree parking camera, and even better stereo and a head-up display. Black is a standard body colour, or you can choose white for no extra cost. Most other colour choices, such as the denim blue we have here, are £595, and these are quite sober except for rose gold. There's a £795 red option, and it's £1,795 for grey matte. One thing we've criticised German cars for in the past, including the Mercedes EQC, is all the different option packs that can add a lot of price to the car. Now, thankfully, that isn't true of the EQA, with just a £6,000 difference between the Premium Plus that we have here and the basic Sport model. So that makes actually choosing the car that you want with the options that you want a fair bit easier than, for example, the Audi Q4 e-tron. There is one option pack, however, called the Driving Assistance Package that costs £1,495, and you're probably going to want to have that. It adds a few extra souped-up elements on top of the safety features, but one really important aspect, Mercedes Distronic, which is their name for adaptive cruise control. So basically all cars have cruise control, but you have to have Distronic to make it adaptive. Another feature on all cars is electric folding mirrors. Now we've unlocked the car, let's have a look inside. Interiors are part of the reason you buy a Mercedes, and we're pleased to report this remains a strength with the EQA. All trim levels have something called Artico man-made leather-like seat material, although the design has more detailed touches as you go up the range, while AMG line and above are sports seats. It's great that all cars have heated front seats too. However, you do need to go up the range to Premium or Premium Plus to get these electronically adjustable seats with a memory function. You'll also notice that the passenger has memory electric seats as well. In addition to that, you get lumbar adjustment on the side of the seat as well. These seats are really quite comfortable, but the general sense is not quite as spacious as you get with the Volkswagen Group SUVs. The headroom is great, but all this extra stuff around you, particularly the center console, just gives you a slight sense of being enclosed when you're sitting in the driver's seat. On the other hand, the general use of materials is, as you would expect for Mercedes, extremely high quality with a strong sense of luxury. Let's have a look at the storage that you get when you're in the front seats. This cubby underneath an armrest is a typical design from Mercedes. This cubby is quite deep but maybe a bit narrow, and you get a couple of USB-C ports. So moving forward, underneath this sliding door is a couple of cup holders, and we rather like this function. It makes the cup holders a bit smaller for smaller cups, and you could actually put one at a time as well. Under here you get a conventional 12-volt car power adapter and another USB-C port, and this is actually a wireless phone charger. However, that wireless phone charger is only available on the Premium and Premium Plus trims. The glove compartment isn't badly sized. You can see there's enough space for documentation, and you could possibly put maybe 2 pairs of gloves in there. We rather like this little ledge here. And also with the Premium and Premium Plus is this panoramic sunroof. You can see it has a blind that opens, and if you touch it one more time, after it's finished opening, that is, which is now, it's also the glass moves so you can get lovely, lovely air flowing through your car, or, as it's raining right now, some rain. Not all crossovers do so well when it comes to rear seat space. However, this car is pretty good. You can see there's plenty of headroom and a decent amount of knee room. However, one thing we would point out is that the floor for the rear seats is quite high, so you can see that my knees are up at an angle. It's still not that bad for a long journey. The middle seat is, as usual, a bit thinner, but there isn't a transmission tube to get in the way, which is handy. However, if you do only have two people in the car, you can pull this down as always. And Mercedes has done its usual thing of actually hiding the cup holders in there, so they kind of pop out, and then they have this thing here to kind of hold the cup from slipping through. And then and the great thing about this is that any kind of size cup will fit, because it will clamp it in place nicely for you. The air conditioning isn't tri-zone, but rear seat passengers do get their own vents to adjust. There's this little ledge here for, I don't know, putting a couple of toffees on, but only one USB-C port. There are nets on the back of both front seats for your kids to put their copies of Harper's Bazaar or whatever it is kids read these days. You only get ISOFIX points on the two rear seats, there's none on the front. If the rear passenger space is commendable, the rear cargo space isn't so much. We do appreciate the fact you have a kick-release electric boot. However, you can see that this is not such a large space here for cargo. The boot floor is pretty high. You do get this small space underneath where you can have your first aid kit, locking wheel nuts and the tyre inflator, but it's not big enough to put the cables in. This boot space is only 340 litres, which is more akin to a hatchback than an SUV. The Volkswagen Group SUVs have a lot larger space in the rear. Also, this car is based on the Mercedes GLA, and that has 100 litres more boot capacity. Also, surprisingly, for a Premium Plus Mercedes, this is just a kind of manual thing that you remove. Quite a few other cars that we've seen from Mercedes that have that trim level actually have an electric blind that goes out the way for you, although that is harder to remove than this is. High quality in feel though. Now, you'll notice that these seats have, there's a nice 20% slot in the middle, which is good if you want to put maybe skis or just kind of one kind of lengthy item in the back while you have two adult passengers. And then of course you've got 40 and another 40. Another omission here that we've seen from other Mercedes in this trim level is actual boot release buttons on the sides of the boot, so that's missing. However, this boot space is now 1,320 litres, which is decent. Not quite up with a small estate car, but decent enough. And you also notice it's pretty flat and there's no boot lip either, which means if you do need to stick something that kind of pops out the back of the car, you can do that. And you have extra functions on this boot like this, which you can shut the boot and then you can just press that button again to hold it. Another plus with the EQA is that all versions of the car can tow, and that's a £750 upgrade that is available directly from Mercedes. Now this one, the 250, can only tow 750 kilograms, braked or unbraked. However, if you go up to the 300 or 350, that rises quite a lot to 1,800 kilos braked. So you could really pull a sizable caravan with those two cars. We do like it when the seat belts stay out of the way when you put the seats back up. One area where the EQA does particularly disappoint, however, is the range. That 66.5 kilowatt hour battery only gives you up to 264 miles and a bit less if you have bigger wheels and the more powerful motors. That's a bit of a shame when the Volkswagen Group SUVs can regularly do over 300 miles of range. That range is on par with the Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus, the ID3 basic 58 kilowatt ID3, and it's actually more than a Volvo XC40 AWD Recharge Plus. However, this car costs almost as much as the long-range version of the Tesla Model 3, which does start to put things in perspective. However, we did drive this car all the way from North London to Nottingham and back in one day, and it only really required one stop to recharge. The long-range usability is helped by a number of extra features. For example, the AC charging is 11 kilowatts AC as standard, and you get DC charging that actually goes over 100 kilowatts. On a 7 kilowatt hour AC wall box, it takes 5 3/4 hours to go from 10 to 100%. And with that fast DC charging, you can get to 80% in about half an hour, which we proved by using it on an Untitled charger, which is actually peaking at 114 kilowatts. Maybe not up with the Tesla Model 3, but definitely not bad either. This car isn't that bad when it comes to economy either. On that mythical 14p per kilowatt hour supply, it's about 3.5p a mile. Obviously, most suppliers are now getting towards 18p per kilowatt hour. Anyone who's familiar with the Mercedes will be pretty familiar with the general layout of the controls in this car, because it's all pretty standard. There's this button for turning the system on, and if you actually want the full system on, you have to have your foot on the brake. This is the sports steering wheel with Alcantara covering. Some Mercs have a separate stalk with the cruise control, but this one has all the buttons here on the right hand side of the steering wheel. On the left hand side you have some controls for the volume, voice activation, telephone, and some menu related stuff here. You get these paddles for changing the strength of the regeneration. The left hand stalk does the windscreen wipers and the rear ones, and also does the main beams and the indicators. You'll have noticed that there are a lot of functions on that left-hand stalk. That's because this right-hand one is like a Tesla, and actually Mercedes invented this concept. You pull down for drive, you pull up for reverse, and then you press the button on the end for park. There is a separate dial down here for operating the lights manually, but you could just leave that on auto mode because that works pretty well with a Mercedes. The dashboard display looks fairly conventional, but obviously it's completely digital. The whole thing is a screen. You get speed on the left. However, we think this display for remaining range down the bottom here is a bit small, although you do get a analog version. Over on the right is a dial showing you power and regen, and a little couple of things to show you what gear you're in, and also this one here which shows you what drive mode you're in. The Premium Plus has this excellent HUD projected right onto the windscreen with speed, limit and safety, as well as navigation information. In the middle of the central console you've got a bunch of switches. This one here is for changing the power, and you've got Sport, Comfort and Eco, which limits your top speed. Various other switches here for calling up the navigation, another volume control, and this pad here, which is a tad unnecessary because, as we'll find, the central media screen is actually a touch screen. There's a full gamut of separate buttons for the air conditioning, which some people will appreciate, and these are exactly the same as on other Mercedes. This 10-inch media screen is common to all cars. Mercedes used to make screen size a differentiator across trims, but thankfully now they don't. As we said, you can use that funny kind of touchpad to control this, but as is a touchscreen, as usual, Mercedes has given you far too many ways to do something. You'll notice this is haptic as well, so it's actually responding not just to, I don't have to touch it, it's actually responding to where my fingers are. So I can go to navigation. This navigation comes with 3 years of live traffic, and you can see it's also, if I take my hand away, that should disappear, and then it will appear when my hand goes. And address search, actually very good, completely keyword operated. You can just put in a place and it will find it for you via keyword, very good, and quite responsive too. There's a DAB radio there, and of course we're on Radio 4 because we're middle class. You can connect your phone. This car does support CarPlay and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The easiest way to get to all the settings is to press the car button down here. And you can turn off and on things like the ESP function, turn off the HUD, turn that back on again. You can configure the various assistance functions, like how early you want to be warned, traffic sign assist, visible and audio, for example. You can configure the automatic seat adjustment, how the lights operate, and the system in general. This is a Linguatronic as well, so you've got some voice activation. Despite the AMG branding and F1 heritage, Mercedes cars are generally more about comfort than driving thrills. The EQA definitely sits in that category. The 250 we have here is not tremendously fast, taking 8.9 seconds to hit 62 miles per hour, although it still does have plenty of torque off the lights in sport mode. The 300 takes a reasonable 7.7 seconds to hit the same 62 miles per hour, whereas the 350 is fairly quick at 6 seconds. That puts it on par with the dual motor Volkswagen Group SUVs. Handling is very much on the comfort side. We're surprised that this car doesn't have Mercedes' excellent Airmatic air suspension, which Mercedes has been putting on its plug-in hybrids to compensate for the extra weight of the batteries. But even with regular coil springs, this car eats up bumps tremendously well. The Premium Plus also has adjustable dampers, although we didn't find a lot of difference in the different settings. The stiffness apparently changes with drive mode, but it's not as noticeable as, for example, with the Airmatic suspension that we talked about a second ago. However, this car is quite tall and the centre of gravity is higher than a lot of other electric SUVs. You definitely don't want to barrel into a corner at too high a speed in the EQA. However, on a motorway, this car is extremely planted and comfortable, and the adaptive cruise control, it's very easy to adjust the speed of that cruise control. Speaking of cruise control, Mercedes is to be commended with just how much safety kit comes as standard with the EQA. This is often a way that German car companies use to convince you to buy extra option packs. The basic package includes all the modern capabilities like active braking and lane keep assist. There's blind spot detection too. That said, and as we said before, that £1,495 driving assistance package is necessary if you want Distronic, which includes adaptive cruise control. We still think it's a shame that you can buy the top trim level like this car has and still not have adaptive cruise control as standard. If MG can do that in cars costing well under £30,000, Mercedes seems a bit mean. It also occasionally resets to what it thinks is a new speed limit, but it's very easy to adjust back to the speed that you want. It's a pricey option, which we begrudgingly think you should get. Speaking of price, this is one area where this car is not as expensive as it could have been. The EQC is quite an expensive vehicle, starting at over £65,000. The EQA starts at a much more reasonable £44.5 for the 250 Sport. The AMG line is £1,500 more, and the premium version of that is £3,000 more, and the Premium Plus is £6,000 more. However, you can only get the Sport trim with the 250. The 300 starts at AMG line. That's over £48,000, with the 350 starting at over £49,000. If you want to get the 350 AMG line Premium Plus, it's a fiver under £56,000. The car we're driving with its options is £54,085. That sounds expensive for a small SUV when the GLA starts at £10,000 less. But comparing to a GLA with similar engine power, the difference is more like £7,000. More importantly, the top EQA is still cheaper than the XC40 all-wheel drive. The Ford Mustang Mach-E gives you more for less, but it doesn't have the class or interior quality of the EQA. In other words, this car isn't even vaguely a bargain, but it's not extortionate for a Mercedes either. That said, insurance is going to cost you a bit because all these cars are in insurance groups in the high 40s. So now we're going to put this car in reverse. As we said before, this car has a 360 reversing camera. All cars have a reversing camera, and you'll see it's really excellent. You get a really good top-down view. On one level, the Mercedes EQA is not that exciting. It's supposed to be a small electric SUV, only Mercedes, and that's exactly what it does. Sure, the 250 is not that fast, and there are competitors that give you more for less. None of them give you the dependable luxury that this car does though. The Mercedes EQA may not be a very special EV, but it is a very comfortable and luxurious form of electric transport. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.